Welcome, my name's Chris and I'm back this week with another lesson for you. This is going to be covering the 12-bar blues in a jazz guitar context and is really aimed at beginners who are looking to get their foot in the door with this stuff, to be able to play some tunes. There are so many tunes based off this easy 12-bar blues form that I've got. I've kind of got the most simplified version you'll see in jazz. And I'm going to be just using two shapes. These are called shell chords, and these are really common chords on guitar. I'll briefly talk about those, and I'll talk about how to think about this, how to use the numbers in this tune, and how to practice this. So let me just jump in here. I want to assume you might know the names of the notes on the thickest string and the next string. So hopefully you can kind of brush up on that. Also, I'm using numbers in this specific context, and I think that's really good to practice that, so that's why I'm making you do it. And in the bottom there, you can see the numbers for the key of F, and specifically just the chords we're using, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 chord. There's just two shapes we're going to need here. Let's start on the fifth string, actually. So this shape, if I make them like a C7 shell chord, and again, all these are sevens. I went ahead and put the sevens on everything, but that's a good way to get into the blues. You can play a 7 chord on everything. Doesn't necessarily mean you will every time, but dominant chords are going to immediately sound bluesy, and they really lead one to another here, as you'll see soon. So if I'm going to make a C7 chord, the shell chord, on the fifth string, then there's my C note, right? And this is a real simple backwards kind of triangle. So 3, 2, 3, no skips or anything. That's what we got, okay? So nice and easy. And that could be moved around. D7 on 5, 5, 4, 5, F7 on A7, 8. In fact, you could play this whole tune with just this one shape, right? But this shape pairs with a shape on the thickest string, and the voice leading really works beautifully when you go between the two. This shape, the one I just showed you, actually technically does work on the thickest, but you want to be kind of careful because getting this low, like to my ears, maybe I can use it on B flat or B, but I'm going to show you another shape, and that will really help our voice leading as we learn this tune or learn this kind of idea. So on this string, just to reiterate, A7, 8 would be an F7, D7, 5, 4, 5, B7, 2, 1, 2, as simple as that. And that's all we want to hear is just those three notes. I'm kind of muting the guitar, the thickest string and two thinnest strings. You only want to hear those three. And in fact, when you don't want to hear them, I would take your pressure off like that. Just kind of practice being able to stop that pressure, and that's all we hear, right? It's just those three notes. So on the next string, the thickest, the shape will be, we'll do a C7 again. So it would be eighth, right? That's where the C is on thickest. And then I'm skipping the A string entirely. And I'm going to go to 8 on the D, and then 9. So we have 8, skip, 8, 9. Hopefully you can see that. Again, there's a diagram if you need it in the description. So this is a great shape too, in that, again, the A string is muted, and then there's nothing on the two thinnest, right? So this would be C7, this is G7, A7. I can move that around anywhere. So G7 would be 3, skip, 3, 4. F7 would be 1, skip, 1, 2, right? The shell chords, the reason they're so great to learn and a really good way to get your foot in the door as a guitarist is because all we're playing is root 3 and 7. And in this way, when we're playing C7 like this on the fifth string, I'm playing root 3, 7 in that order. Okay? And that's great because that's all we need, really. In fact, you could take away the root, but in this context, we really want to play the root because we want to hear the chord correctly, and we want to train our brain, and maybe down the road we could just play 3 and 7 in certain musical situations. So root 3, 7. On the thickest string, it reverses that. It's root still, and then 7, 3. So you can hear that one has a different melody. Right? So that's kind of the two versions of the shell chord. And in fact, one of the themes as we work through these changes here is I want you to practice both positions. So you can kind of just mix it up. Again, this is a simplified blues form, but pretty common. You might see variations on it a little bit, but this is kind of, I think, the most basic you can make it. So getting into this, I want you to practice, maybe the first level would be being able to play whole notes or half notes when you need it, when you got them. Just basically in any position, one of the two chord positions we can do. So on the thickest or the next string. If I go through that just slowly, I could kind of work on that. And in fact, just to review maybe on one string at a time, let's work through these changes just on one string, meaning we're gonna have to move a lot, right? So let's do the thickest first, just because we just left that one. So there's the thickest F7, right? 1, 1, 2, I'm skipping the A, okay? And I'm thinking the key of F. So to briefly review, I'll have my F, my 1, right? 4 of that is B flat, right? Hopefully really familiar sound, back to 1. And then 1 on bar 4, bar 5, B flat again, bar 6, or sorry, bar 7, back to 1, and then D7 would be the 6, way up there. G7's the 2, C7's the 5, back to 1. And then we have 6, 2, 5. That's a lot of moving around, right? But it's actually kind of helpful. You can even just practice this with one finger, but as quick as you can get that shape in there, I would. And I'll say a brief note, I know you can't see really my fingers, but I'm plucking these right now. You can kind of use, I'm kind of using my thumb and index to just pluck 3 strings. But feel free to use any technique. In fact, you could get into this pretty quickly of this kind of chunky kind of comping, which I really dig for these chords, and I think it was a really good rhythm to get in your fingers. So let's try this at the very basic level, only thickest string and whole notes essentially. You can kind of play multiple feels on this, but the whole point of this is to move around the guitar and hit some of these spots and to practice this form, okay? So nice and slow. I want to probably play these quarter notes, and I'm just going to be moving around just on thickest, okay? So here we go. So 1, 2, ready, and F7, and bar 2 here. If you need to go like this, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's great. You can do that. Here's bar 5, our 4 chord. Again, maybe we're going to go up here now to 13 for the 1 chord. 6 chord, 2 chord, G7, right? 5 chord. 1, 6, 2, 5, back to 1. Okay, so that's a really good skill, and that is a little redundant. We're gonna not move that much, but if you really wanna work out just that one shape, you can. And we're also working out the form and also working out the note names, right? So there's a lot going on there. So it's nice to sometimes just limit ourselves. Okay, so the other shape, real briefly, let's do that with the other shape only. So now 5th string, playing all the changes with just this triangle shape. The first will be 8, 7, 8. Right, then I'm gonna go to the 4 chord. Now here, if we take this all the way down, keep the same shape to B flat, I would get 1 open 1. So that's okay, you can do it there. It's got an open string in there. Typically we're not playing open notes in jazz chords as much, but that's okay. And you could also go to 13, right? Just like the F7, I played in both spots, okay? So here we go with the form, one time through with just the 5th string chords moving around. Now thinking about the note names on this string, okay? Nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2. Now going down to B flat or up is fine. Back to F7. Cheated a little bit, but I'll talk about that. Back to F7, and then D7s are 6, G7s are 2, C7s are 5, and then we have our half notes here. This is called the turnaround, right? 5, back to 1. Okay, nice and simple. Not too bad, right? So you really want to practice that. You can just now mix it up. You can just practice seeing, can I go maybe even from one chord to the next, like when you have 2 1s or 2 4s in a row, try to hit both spots. But you can just kind of jump around. And I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm moving a little bit, and there's a lot of freedom here we can find eventually. But you have to really know this first level very well. So go slow, right? If you went 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how to make this really easy, right? Anybody could do that. If you just limit yourself and you really get these, the muscle memory there that you need, and also the muscle memory, kind of the mental muscle memory of where these notes are. And we're also doing that in time with the changes, all right? So go slow. I will link to an F backing track you could use, but you could just use a metronome. You could just do it without, but try to find some limiting aspect here to really give yourself a good difficulty level that's just right outside your comfort zone. So where this starts to get really beautiful is when we now integrate both sets of chord forms. So the thickest string form and the next string form. And the idea is we're just going to go to the next closest one. So now I have to think about both string note names, right? So now let's start here. And I'm just going to now take the closest path. See if you can do this with me. Go nice and slow. But immediately you'll see F and B flat go really close to one another. The other section that you'll see that does that is the G7 to C7 to F7. Isn't that beautiful? So we have G7 and F7, and in the middle of that we have C7. And listen to that top note. Right, third or fourth fret there. Third fret. Isn't that beautiful? So when you skip letters, like, or skip numbers even, right? 1 to 4 or 2 to 5, that's especially when you're going to see these beautiful voice leading things that really make this work. And this is the whole point of this video, is to kind of give you this information. And I think you can really benefit from this concept. And really, at all times when we're comping and playing chords, that's the ethic we want. We want to really voice lead smoothly, okay? So when we do this, we're about to do it starting here. So starting on the A string, and then we'll also try it starting on thickest. And we should get 2 different paths, okay? Let's give it a shot. Nice and slow, okay? Same idea, 12-bar blues, but now switching to the next closest one, okay? 1, 2, ready, Now the next string is that B flat. I'm just gonna stay here. You're going back to that B flat for the 4. And then here's our F7 again. Now our D7, I'm just going to move down the same string. And now G7. Right? And C7. And then we have our turnaround F7, D7, G7. Right? And again, make it easier if you need to. If you don't want to do that kind of comping, if it feels kind of awkward, you might just go play a whole notes or half notes, just play one chord or every chord one time. Really listen to that top note. Right? If you can really get those to connect, right? And in fact, I'm keeping my ring finger on the shape change, if you can see that. So from here, keeping my ring on there. And that really works well. Like there, you see that G7. So you can kind of, the more you know these kind of one at a time, the more they'll, of course, transition. But we're really trying to go for like legato as possible. Really connected, and often keeping a finger on a string if we can. Okay, that's the first step of that. Now the next step would be starting here. Okay, same thing, gonna go to the closest chords. I'm gonna go and use that B flat 7 with the open D, just because that is the closest chord and that's what the voice leading wants to do. Okay, let's give it a shot. So 1, 2, ready, to F7, now D7. I want to go up to this one just because I haven't done this one yet. G7, and C7, and F7, D7, G7, C7. you just keep on going, right? You could play a backing track and play that 5 or 6 times and really vet this information, really work it out, make your hands hit all these different spots, just see where you want to go, see if you can kind of like just test every angle of this, so that way you really have this down. And of course you can use these 7 chords in any jazz tune, but the blues is a perfect place to where we can just use only the 7 shape. But the rationale is similar for other chords. So major 7 chords, minor 7, any kind of chord you can play on the thickest or you can play on the next string, and you can get to, it's often like especially when you're skipping like 1 to 4, the next closest chord is almost always on the other string because these are 4th apart, right? So that kind of stands to wager that like G7 to C7 is going to be really easy to go from one to another like that versus G7 to C7, right? And in this case, actually, I'll briefly talk about this and I'll talk about it more in the future. This root 7-3, the 3 goes into the 7 of the next chord, and the 7 goes into the 3rd, right? Kind of cool. So it's constantly going 3-7 to 7-3, 3-7 7-3. Okay, so now the next level to this, and this is where I'll probably do one more point here that you can explore, and then I'll save the rest for another day, or save the next levels of this 12-bar blues stuff. So once you have those main spots in your fingers, right, you can really move around. Of course, you might try this in another key. You might try B flat blues or G blues or C blues or whatever. You're going to start to see a lot of these patterns emerge and hopefully get more automatic. So the next level would be to just introduce some chromatic motion, because this immediately makes us sound better and more hip and gives us more movement for essentially free. And this is kind of assuming you know the form pretty well, but hopefully you can kind of tighten up your knowledge of the form with some practice and just some familiarity of the form. So what I mean by this is, imagine I go through here and I'm gonna kind of switch chords every 2 beats. And how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna introduce just some motion we can do, either approaching the next chord by chromatic, either above or below. Really doesn't matter, you can kind of do both. Again, you can kind of really test this and try to do it multiple ways. Or I might also just like play around the chord I'm currently on. So I want to demonstrate this with the first 4 measures, and then I'll try the whole thing. Let's say I'm here, okay? And the next closest B flat's here. So what if I take the chord above this, B7, and I lead into B flat? When you go from F7 to B7, a lot of cool stuff starts to emerge, like they basically share the top 2 notes. So we call this a tritone, right? Isn't that cool? So these 2 notes are the 3 and 7 of both chords, but you know, F7, E flat A is the 7 and 3, and B7, D sharp A is the 3 and 7. It's beautiful. If that's kind of gibberish, it's okay, but they just have a lot of commonality, which helps us out, right? So if I go like 1, approaching this chord, and there's bar 2, right? So that's the idea. Approaching that chord, bar 2, and then let's say I want to approach now F7. I want to do the same idea, go a half step above. So now this turns into this. Nice, right? And we can just kind of really use this technique, kind of overdo it to really understand it. This is kind of like making an etude out of this idea. And we're just taking whatever thing we're trying to acquire, like a new piece of vocab, and to run it through a concept or a tune or a set of changes, and to do it on everything, to exhaust all the possibilities, right? Okay, so the only time this might be funky, like this F7 here, to do it again, I might want something else there. We'll talk about some other stuff you could do, but like let's say I do, what's something easy? We could just repeat ourselves for now, that's okay. I want to give you some other stuff you can mess with there. But let's see what happens. I don't want to give you much else. I just want you to try this half note idea and to realize that the movement's more important than the exact chord we're playing, because we're already playing like a wrong chord. So it's more about like where you're going. And there might be times that this gets strange. You could even do stuff like, see that 1 and 6 are pretty close in numbers, right? So like 1, 7, flat 7, 6. That's the notes that connect those two. So I could go F, E, E flat, D. And I kind of got to the D. 1, da, da. Got to it on the 6 instead of the, or I got to it on beat 3 instead of beat 1. But stuff like that is really hip, and hopefully your ear will pick up on like that's cool, right? So let's see what happens when I do this half note approach. And you're gonna try this with me though. If you go from below versus above or above versus below, we might not match up. But both going a chromatic above, approaching the note and then going below, or you'll kind of see, I'll use both ways. So, okay, let's give it a shot. So nice and slow, okay? So 1, 2, ready, So every 2 beats I'm changing, right? Here I want to just repeat that one again. Now I'm going to the 4 chord. There I was going to repeat that. Back to the 1, right? Here's a 6. 2, approaching the 5, approaching the 1, 6, 2, and then those are already switching half notes, okay? So I didn't love all that, but hopefully you get the sense of how to work on this. Let's do it from starting up here now, see what happens, okay? This time, when you have, like here, the E7, it's kind of hard to use underneath that chord because it's got a lot of open. It's got open, open, 1, right? That's that form. Imagine I'm playing it like that, right? So I want to now do it up here, and you can see some of this movement from below, maybe. Okay, let's give it a shot. Nice, same thing. So 1, 2, ready, Now I can approach F from below, which is nice, right? There's that D7, approaching the G7, approaching the C7, approaching F7. And here, we could even turn this up. So what if I do this idea here now using a chord, approach chord, chord, approach chord, chord. So I'm playing like essentially quarter notes. So that'd be like 1, approach, right, D7, approach G7, G7, approach C7. So that'd be like bum, 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 right, which is really cool to me. So it's really fun. Keeps our ear kind of moving forward. So that's the kind of crux of this lesson, is to know this form well enough to do the simple stuff if you need it, do whole notes. Then maybe get your arm moving more and playing more beats. Playing this quarter note kind of thing is really getting into being able to play the pulse. Like you could play a whole gig with just this as accompaniment and someone else, you singing or soloing or whatever, playing the melody above you. But this kind of carries the thing, right? So I want to show this concept off a little bit, and I'll leave you with this. I want to play through this form a few times, and we'll do another video, another series on some other movements you can do, and then getting into quarter note movement. So we just kind of talked, we went up to half note movement. But let me use the half notes, and then I'll leave you with this. I will play through some of this, and we'll be back next time with another video. But I hope this has been helpful, and you can benefit from this approach to shell chords and the blues. So here we go. I'll play it a couple times, and I'll let you go. Thanks. All right, here we go. 1, 2, ready. Just a few more times. I'll do one PSA for my quarter notes, so this will be coming next time. Okay, so now your job is to get this in your fingers. Really play these half note movements and try to get used to playing every beat like that. I think that'll really help. And then also get used to mixing it up on where you start. Really exhaust this and see how far you can get with just a 7 chord and just moving it around in this form. And yeah, do it 5 or 6 times in a row, and if you fall off the horse a few, that's fine, right? That's the whole point. So, okay, until next time, I'll be back, and I hope this lesson was enjoyable. Like the video if it's helpful. Subscribe to this channel for more lessons, and I will see you next time. Thanks.